Hello everyone, welcome to the first official module of this class. We are going to be reading chapters 1 and 2 of the book, and I encourage everyone to do that reading before watching this lecture, or if you watch this before, just make sure you do the reading. It's going to be helpful and important, and your quizzes are going to come from the book and be open book. So again, today we're talking about what is helping. Now, there are a lot of different types of helpers. I want to start with that. I have had people in this class, and in this class as I've taught it at other institutions, that have a background in athletic training, in nursing, nutrition, people who are pre-med, and I obviously tend to get a lot of human services and social work students in here, psychology students, and we know that there are many, many ways to help. But a very basic definition, which we are giving here, is that a helping relationship is one where there is a helper, the person providing help, and there is a client, the person receiving help. So again, in this class, we're not going to refer to specific disciplines because all kinds of people help, but a helper is someone providing that help, and we're going to refer to the people receiving help as clients. And generally, what is the goal of helping? On page 46 of the text, they give 3 common reasons why people might seek help and might be good outcomes from helping. The first is remoralization, and that is a sense of people getting help and feeling like their well-being is better. Maybe they have more of a sense of self-efficacy. They feel that they got, maybe it wasn't a tangible thing, but they got some kind of emotional sense of wherewithal, more understanding, and whether or not their situation has changed, they feel better about it. I think one really good example of that might be going to grief counseling. Sometimes there's not always something that can be fixed, and the goal isn't always to necessarily make people feel less sad, but how to make sense of that sadness so that hopefully over time they have a more general sense of being okay and having more well-being. Another example is remediation, and that is where someone is achieving symptomatic relief, where maybe they're coming to get help because, if they were going to a nurse, they had some type of physical illness. If they were going to someone like me, a counselor, maybe they're having a lot of anxiety. And remediation might look like kind of a reduction in those symptoms, feeling some symptomatic relief. And the last broad category is rehabilitation, and that refers to when people are going to help and they're hoping to cut back on maybe maladaptive behavior. So things like addiction would fall into this, or maybe unhelpful relationship behaviors that they're having, if they're always lashing out at loved ones and they're trying to find other ways to manage their anger. So there are a lot of goals in helping. Those are just 3 different categories that the book gave. But again, people come to get help for all kinds of different reasons, and the skills that we're going to talk about in this class, I think, can be used in all types of situations with all types of helping issues. And let's start with maybe, again, I think something that's really important. What are the conditions for people seeking help? This is always helpful for me to think about whether I'm working with a student or when I've been working with clients. We want to remember that a person is asking for help because they're in pain or they have a difficult situation. And so first, that has to be conditioned. They have to be struggling with something. And then second, the pain or difficulty is, it's greater than the perceived barriers, which means they know that they have to seek help in some way. They have to ask for help because they cannot keep going as things have been going. They're reaching out for help because they can't do it alone. They need someone else to help them. And so I always like to remember that when people are seeking help, they're often in vulnerable situations. And that makes me think I need to treat this person with extra care. They're feeling vulnerable, they're struggling, and I might have some way to help them. I will say in the first 2 chapters of the text, they're going to go over a lot of different elements between what it's like to be a student, things you should be doing to improve your skills, different factors of helping, but I thought I would just kind of give a quick overview that's taken from the text and maybe some other observations, or what are some common factors of successful helping. We know that helping can look like a lot of different things, but generally there's a person who needs assistance and can't do it on their own. Some common factors of successful helping, the first that I want to chat about is the therapeutic alliance. They talk about this a little bit in chapter 2, and I'm going to have an additional video going over some of the factors of a therapeutic alliance. But all that to say, one of the most important predictors of whether or not helping is successful is if there is that therapeutic alliance. And what does that mean? It means that can the helper and the client come together, work together? Can the client feel safe with the helper to explore what's going on? And when that happens, when people feel comfortable and safe with the person helping them, we get much better outcomes. Now think about that. On the discussion board this week, I'm going to ask you to talk to someone about, what makes a good helper or a bad helper. But can you think about times that someone tried to help you and you did not feel comfortable, you did not feel safe, you did not feel respected? You probably shut down. You probably didn't listen to what they have to say. And maybe they didn't have your best interests at heart. But when you talk to someone who is open, who is interested in who you are, what your needs are, we tend to feel like we can get more out of that. I know when I go to the doctor's office, if a medical provider is open to answering my questions, is asking me a lot of questions, I usually leave feeling really great, and I've usually gained a lot more information about how to take care of myself. When doctors are not interested in talking to me and answering my questions, we don't have that alliance, and it usually is, a little bit more disappointing and sometimes leads to poor healthcare. So that just is one example. And, there are different qualities that can really help a helper be very therapeutic and build a strong alliance, and those include being empathic. The book separates out compassion from empathy, but generally we think of empathy and compassion in the same kind of vein. Being authentic, being your authentic self, and also showing unconditional positive regard. And again, I will post another video that talks a little bit more about those concepts. Another really important factor to successful helping are ethics. Now we have a lot to cover, so I'm actually going to talk about ethics a little bit more next week. But it's really important that helpers understand and practice out of the ethical codes of their profession. As a mental health counselor, I have a very lengthy set of ethical codes that I have to understand and practice out of, that also include ethics about how I am as a teacher to my students in my counseling program. Different professions have different ethical codes, but there also tend to be general ethical principles, and that's what we're going to dive into a bit more next week. But principles of autonomy, beneficence, non-malfeasance, justice, fidelity, and veracity. We do not live in a world where people are largely driven by rationality and ethics, but as a helper, it is so important that you take seriously the charge to treat people fairly, to understand how to be an ethical provider, because again, you're helping people that are vulnerable. And if you don't have ethical practice, and if you're not pursuing ethical practice, you can cause a lot of harm, and that is the opposite of usually, as helpers, what we're trying to accomplish. Another successful common factor to successful helping is learning. We can, there's that phrase, if you can give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. The concept here is that in helping, we don't want clients to be dependent on us. We don't want to just give them answers. We know that really good client goals actually come from the clients discovering those on their own. Really good insights come from us helping clients find those insights. Clients need to learn in helping. They need to learn new skills. They need to think about their situations in new ways, maybe learn new coping tools. But when clients learn things from a helping relationship, it means that they are stronger, more aware of themselves and their needs than when they first started helping, and that they have learned skills that they can take with them long after helping has ended. Another successful factor in helping is, in many helping cases, it's the ability to access emotions. And what do I mean by that? We don't want helping situations where we're just making people get very overwhelmed and emotional and frustrated, but we want to have a helping environment where clients can be open and honest about their emotions. We as humans are very emotional creatures. A lot of our behaviors and choices are really guided by a lot of our feelings, as much as we like to say that we are rational creatures. So we want to create space for that. We want to create space for people to access their emotions and explore their emotions with us as they relate to whatever goals they're bringing into the helping process. Because to say that we're not going to explore emotions means that we're not creating space for people to be people, and people are emotional creatures. So that will certainly be something that we look at in this class, and we'll explore more about the role of emotions and how important they are and how to explore those in a helping relationship. Another factor is just enhancing self-efficacy, that through helping relationships, people can hopefully learn more about themselves and feel more confident, feel more sure about who they are, what they want, what they need, what problems they're having, and maybe find, again, new ways to address them, maybe learn new skills. And all of that, builds this stronger sense of self-efficacy, which is really just the belief that you have the skills that you need to go through life and you are capable of doing what you value and what's important to you. Another important factor in helping, successful helping is often practicing. One skill that we will talk about, some skills that we'll talk about through this class actually involve the client either talking about, things going on in their life and their relationships, or even practicing having conversations with other people, but in helping people get to practice, maybe having a tough conversation with a helper, talking about it beforehand, before they have to have that with their parent, their partner, their friend, etc., with their boss, with their colleague in some way, right? There are a lot of times that problems come up in people's lives, and a helping relationship can be a place for them to, kind of springboard ideas off of the helper and practice different things, and prepare for maybe actions they might have to do in real life. So practicing is a part of that. And, there are a lot of different goals for a helping relationship, and those can look very different based on the client and what needs they're coming in with. But again, some of these common goals that we see that we want to pursue with our clients are, again, finding support and relief, maybe feeling a little bit more supported and feeling a little bit more comfortable, finding more relief than they had before. Gaining insight, that's a huge part of helping. Successful helping isn't just telling people what to do or telling people what to think. That's actually usually not very helpful at all. But giving clients a space for them to explore what's going on for them so they can make new awareness, new meaning for themselves. As we talked about before, learning new skills. They might learn new coping skills. They might gain more health information from working with you. They might know more about their well-being, etc., depending on your background and what your profession is going to be. But generally, we're teaching people some new things. Helping creates people space to find clarity, to make new decisions. Life can be hectic. It can be noisy. And sometimes having a helper that's a safe space can just be a good place to kind of unpack things and find clarity in a way that you maybe couldn't in your personal life or with other friends, etc. Receiving feedback. Helpers can sometimes provide feedback to clients in a safe way that maybe, if friends or family members try to give them challenging feedback, they might not hear. We'll talk about challenging clients. That's not something we want to do out of the gate. We want to make sure we have an established relationship with them. But we can provide feedback to clients sometimes when we see that they maybe keep going back to the same thought patterns or the same behaviors and it's not serving them. We, of course, have to give that in a very compassionate, gentle, but direct way. Another goal of helping is clients can sometimes experience a healthy connection with a helper, and that can sometimes be corrective. There are also sometimes potential issues with that, which we'll talk about in a second. But if you've always had really negative relationships, and let's say we have people who've always had unhealthy friendships or romantic relationships, someone might go to, for example, a counselor and realize that, oh, I do deserve to be listened to. Maybe I can have a healthy connection where my needs are also important and it's not always about, the other person, etc. Again, counseling does not mirror what a real relationship is like. Most helping relationships are not going to mirror what real relationships are like because there's usually more give and take, but as a helper, it's really just about the client. But nevertheless, I think clients can absorb things in helping relationships that give them a sense of what could a healthier relationship look like. How do I actually want to engage with people in my life in a healthier way? And lastly, again, always the goal is to make sure that clients are going to leave the helping relationship functioning on their own in a healthier way than before, because helping relationships are not meant to last forever, so the goal is to teach people things that they can take with them. With that being said, there are sometimes problematic aspects of helping. It's not to say that these things always happen, but these can be sometimes some negative consequences of people going to seek help if these are not effectively explored by the helper, etc. The first is that sometimes when people are going to get help, they might get just enough relief to enable them to stay in tough spots. What do I mean by that? In the book, they give an example of maybe women going into domestic violence shelters, and I went into a domestic violence shelter with my mother growing up. I very much know what those look like, what that looks like to be there. I also have counseled people who are in domestic violence shelters, but that can be a place for people to go and leave bad environments, and sometimes people who work there have noticed that they will get just enough, back together again to go back out into the world, and they go right back into those relationships. People have very complicated reasons for staying in domestic violence relationships, so that's in no way to shame those individuals, but sometimes people get just enough help to kind of go back to what they were doing before. The same is true for, you may have heard, a major risk of antidepressant medication for people who might be feeling suicidal is that when they take the antidepressant medication, they might feel just better enough to complete suicide. So actually completing suicide is a risk factor of people who are suicidal on antidepressant medication. So that is why when you're providing help of some kind, you want to make sure that you're thorough. You don't want people to leave the helping relationship prematurely. You want to make sure you want to be aware of those risks of like, in what way could this client maybe be getting just enough to like go back out, and maybe have they not actually done the work that they need to develop goals to like move on to like a safer situation. Another thing that can happen in helping is dependency. What do I mean by that? Of course, when someone is going to helping, it can feel great to have someone to help you, to tell you what to do, who's going to listen. But we don't actually want to tell people what to do, and that's why. If we're just telling people what to do, people can think, oh, I'm just going to be dependent on this person. I'm going to let this person make, choices for me. Helpers can provide so much relief that people can think, oh, I don't have to do this work anymore. I'm paying this person to do that for me. All types of professional helpers know we cannot do the work for the client's well-being ourselves. They have to do that work. That's why we really believe in autonomy, letting clients explore what is meaningful to them, having them kind of come up with their own goals, because again, we don't want them to be dependent on us. We want to give them skills and tools so that they can be successful on their own once helping is ended. Some other topics that they talk about in the book include transference and countertransference. I have another video that talks a bit more about that. But, in basic elements there are that as people, we have a lot of experiences in life, particularly when we're younger, where we kind of build up narratives around certain type of people and how they are. Like if we have a really violent and aggressive father, we may then assume that all men are violent and aggressive, or men that look like our father. And so we all kind of make these unconscious correlations sometimes. And the helping relationship is one place where those can get projected. But again, I'll say more about that in another video. Another problematic aspect of helping, and this is something I do see a lot, is that helpers can impose their values on clients and cause a lot of harm. Most helping professions, unless, for example, you're specifically labeled like a pastoral counselor or someone working within a religious institution, they should not be, for example, imposing their religious beliefs on their clients, because their clients may have a different cultural background. They may have other things that they value. So by imposing our values, you can cause a lot of harm. People with Western values might sometimes work with clients from Asian backgrounds. And a lot of Asian cultures can be more collectivist. They might focus more on, family needs and community needs. And if Western counselors are saying oh, do things that are, good for you and forget about your family or your community culture, that might cause problems. So as helpers, we really want to be aware of our values and the things that matter to us and think about in what ways could I be imposing these on clients. And to avoid doing that, we don't really, want to impose belief system or ways of being. We just want to promote things that we know are evidence-based and are going to actually help someone be healthy, because we can kind of demonstrate that through research, etc. And lastly, when helpers work outside their area of competence, it's really important that when you're working with people not to give advice or not to try to guide people in issues that are beyond your level of training, your level of expertise, etc. And so with that in mind, this is going to be a bachelor's level undergraduate helping skills class. So when you do helping skills demonstrations at the end, these should be over issues like they discussed in the book for practicing. Things are going to be kind of more basic, like relationship stressors or school stressors. We don't want to be talking about severe issues like a significant addiction, right? We want to make sure that we're staying at an appropriate level of competence. In the book, they give examples of what is a model for competent helping, and that is 3 things. The first is helping skills, and that's what we're going to look at in this class, what we're going to practice in here. I encourage you to practice the skills that we talk about as much as possible in your daily life, in your daily relationships. You'll have different activities where I encourage you to practice helping skills. But practicing and learning helping skills is a part of effective helping. The other is those facilitated conditions, being empathic, having unconditional positive regard for clients, which is not the same thing as accepting everything a client says or does, but it means just believing that people inherently have value, and also being authentic, being your genuine self as a professional, but being a real person in the room, not someone pretending to be a helper robot. And the last is self-awareness, and we're going to break into that a lot more next week. But self-awareness is so important as a helper because you are the tool, you are the person in the room, and everything that you do and say is going to be filtered through your own awareness and your own values and way of being. So you have to be aware of that and conscious of that. Another important thing about this class is we're teaching a 3-stage model of helping, and that is exploration, insight, and action. So we're going to be looking a lot in the exploration stage. That's going to be one of the main focuses of this course. We'll also get to insight and action. But in the exploration stage, helpers are facilitating clients as they explore their thoughts and feelings. So there's a huge focus on asking a lot of different questions, using different skills to help clients really give a lot of nuance and give a really rich picture of what is going on for them, how they think, and how they feel about it. And we have a lot of focus here because this is something that a lot of helpers skip over, and it's a little bit, there's a lot of hubris in that, I think, because I always tell clients when I work with them, like, you're the expert of you. And so I need you to teach me about you because you've been you for a long time, I've just met you, and I'm never going to be able to know what it's like to live your life and have your experiences. So, we're helping people explore what's going on for them. We don't want to assume that we know. We also are going to get way better goals later on and much better insights if we spend plenty of time really exploring, getting a very rich picture, again, of the client's thoughts, feelings, and experiences. That moves into the insight stage, and this is where we might kind of look at what we've explored and say, like, is there another way to look at that? Is there another way to foster awareness? Is there something you haven't thought about before? Is there a way to reframe that? Is there something that you're missing in this picture? And sometimes we can go back and forth between exploration and insight, but if we do a really rich job in those stages, that leads to action, and that's where we help the client create their own goals. We coach them in finding, now that we have all this information, we've done this exploring, we've looked at some insights, what do you actually want out of this? What do you want to happen? What changes do you want to make in your life? And again, a lot of helpers rush to action, to giving advice without actually doing the work of really understanding what makes that situation unique for their client and what makes their client's needs unique. So exploration, insight, action, that is a 3-stage model of helping that we'll be looking at in this class. So to round things out, this is my cat Stella. Just some reminders. First journal entries are due next week. I will provide a prompt, so get used to that. About every 2 weeks we'll have a journal. And your first quiz is going to be in 2 weeks, and remember that is going to be open book but timed, so be sure that you're keeping up with your reading and you should be A-okay. Please watch the rest of the videos that I've posted for you this week and head on over to the discussion board. I look forward to reading those. Bye, you guys.